All right, so anyone that's online, we're going to start kicking it off again. About 11:15, and I will hand it over to Michael Brian.
All right, welcome. I'm Michael Colver. I've been a TAM for about 8 years. I've been lucky enough to become a principal here at AWS. I guide and I educate the majority of our entire org on TAM best practices and our learning and development pipeline for TAMs. What do we index on what's most beneficial for our customers, rather they're the smallest customer or our largest customer? I have experience educating and guiding customers through that cloud adoption path.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I'm Brian Dowhan. I am also a principal TAM. I'm out of Portland, Oregon. Been with AWS 3.5 years, work in the small business segment. So last minute presentation here, so we're gonna do our best on this, talking about enterprise support and how to get the most value out of it. Volume okay? So I'll start with a story. So I bought an exercise bike. I know you can't tell, but you know, surprisingly, just because I bought it, I didn't get fit. You know, who knows? It's more of a towel rack right now. So similar with enterprise support, just because you have enterprise support, your environment is not going to become optimized. It's not going to become fit. You have to actively engage and, you know, have a plan for working on this and nurture it. And so that's what we're going to talk about. What are the types of things that you can do to help get the most value out of your enterprise support and not have it turn into a towel rack like my exercise bike?
All right, since he handed it over to me, then you know that we're about to get into something that's actually pretty cool. All right, so he's so one of the key things is he's absolutely right. Just signing on for enterprise support, there's a cost to it. Our customers know that what they're paying for, they need to get value out of, right? It's the conversations we have, it's the artifacts that get driven from it, and it's the activities we map ourselves to. Because all of our customers fall into 3 major categories on 2 different sides. It's called the cloud adoption path. Now I'm gonna do a high level, we're gonna get into that in a little bit. It's beginner cloud, intermediate cloud, advanced cloud. Pretty simple, straightforward. Type of work we provide them, tactical, point in time data, right? This is what my environment's doing now. These are things we're doing now. Analytic, doing some analysis of the things that we're doing. Maybe number of cases, maybe it's technology, maybe it's an architectural review. It's the analysis, okay? Then it's the strategic. How are we planning to do an evolution of where we're at now to where we want to be later? This is how we best utilize enterprise support, is by understanding those 3 different value or variables on both sides. As a TAM and as a customer, if you know those, you can utilize enterprise support in the most effective way. I just summed all that up so you didn't have to read. All right. So when somebody says, what are the enterprise support benefits? Here is your menu of list of options of all the cool things that a TAM can do for you. Is it just TAM driven? No, it could be, maybe it's, you know, we have a business development manager on the team, or we have a CRM, customer relationship manager on the team. Or maybe we have a dedicated concierge or non-dedicated concierge. We have a team. But what this really means is that we can do reviews. What is your architecture doing? What's your technology doing? What is it that TCO, total cost of ownership? We all know that. What about the other 2 variables? Operations, total cost of operations, and total cost of an outage. Those reviews are very important. How do I understand that? From my business perspective, if I'm a customer, I want to know how you're going to enable and make me successful in those 3 areas. So reviews, we'll hit on that a lot. Strategic business reviews, we heard about that in the last presentation. Operational reviews, are we operating effectively and efficiently? Security reviews, we'll get into the SIP program later with Nick. See, good plug there. All right, enablement, is my team educated? Do they have the knowledge to move forward between doing tactical, analytic, and strategic work, or moving me between being very beginner cloud to being very strategic or advanced? That's enablement. That's learning about the services. That's whiteboarding. That's hands-on. That's educating. Collaboration. We love this. Collaboration, a magic we all love. Cadence calls, office hours, and on-sites. Okay? If you just phone it in all the time, you're going to get phone it in results. So why wouldn't you want to engage your team in these key areas to get your team moving forward? Deployments. We have to know when you're deploying, how you're deploying, what you're deploying with, so that we can help make sure your deployments are successful. Risk mitigation, security mitigation. Nick, good plug. Okay. Launching of new products, new strategies, new markets. Support planning. This is important. You're going to hear a lot about this as TAMs start to evangelize what we're doing. I'm paying for enterprise support. What are you doing? It's not just cost op and case jockey stuff. What are you actually doing to enable my business to make business decisions? This is important because we're going to write those down. We're going to say, this is what we're going to give you. These are the top 4 things you've told us is important. And we're going to come back to you and say, these are the support initiatives. Mapping my activities back to those big things is important. Because if all you do is handle us here, that's easy. But you're not getting your value. This is where you start getting your value. Your optimizations, your architecture. We start off, we lift and shift or we move from a data center. We want to make sure that the evolution of our operations is done effectively. Trust but verify, right? Trust but verify sessions. Trust that you're doing stuff right, but verifying with some AWS experts, okay? Cost, knowledge, billing, guidance, best practices. Are we doing the things right? Are we clouding right? Trusted advisor, architectural reference models. We're not just going to give you a list of things for your team to do because your team is doing things for you. Why do you want our team to tell your team to do more work? I have work I'm giving my team. Stop giving them more work. Architectural reference models, trusted advisor. Next iteration, which means long runways, architectural best practices, next version, during your events, during your turnover. We want to make sure you're architecting correctly, which means long runway, not point in time. Service team engagements. Do you guys have some cool stuff that you want our product to do? PFRs? Maybe you want service team engagements as break fix. Maybe you're seeing our service not doing a thing you want it to do. Maybe it's doing a thing that you want it to do and you want to make it better. Specialist requests. Somebody that has an area of knowledge that's super, super deep that is not necessarily what the TAM's area of knowledge is. As TAMs, we love being technologists, but I'm sorry, with the 300 plus services that we have now or 290 plus services that we have now, TAMs cannot be an expert in them all. So we bring in a specialist. And of course, we talk about support handling. This, in the grand scheme of things, is here. If you utilize all of this, we become a very valued member of your team, and we can help you make business decisions going forward, whether it's a product launch, new market space, or new architecture.
I think the trick is there's a lot of engagements that are available to customers that are on enterprise support. The trick is which ones to use. Because as Michael said, we don't want to just give you, busy work. We don't want to say, hey, let's sit down and do a well-architected review if it's not something that's going to help you move your initiative, help move the needle. Understanding your business objectives, your initiatives, and aligning our efforts to those biggest initiatives is what's going to drive the value.
Okay, core meetings. When you come on to enterprise support, you should have 2 major types of meetings. You should have executive meetings. Alignment, this is where your support plan comes into play. Your business reviews come into play. And understanding total cost of ownership, operations, and an outage. The TAM also has a second pillar, working with your operational teams, staying in sync with the projects, the challenges, what's the most up-to-date need of your teams, such as architecture reviews. Are we doing the right thing? Are our deployments going to go right? The people, programs, and technology, this is very important. This filters out through all of our public-facing documentation, internal documentation, and the things we index on. And of course, the engagements, support, break, fix, countdown, operations. But just like I said before, amongst that menu of things that a plethora menu of things that we could do, this falls into it. Yeah, we can skip that one. Okay, this is an animation, so just plop it all the way through. Thank you. All right. Just like I mentioned before, that Swiss Army knife, a list of things that we've got, architectural best practices, deep dives, efficiencies, game days, hands-on. We talked, you saw a presentation around game days today. That was a big deal. That had a huge customer impact. Customer advocacy, like we're behind the scenes telling the service teams that you guys need help, or you want to evangelize a new thing, or they need to get educated, or and architectural reviews. We have a direct pipeline to the service teams. This is awesome because we get to be your advocate on the back end. Okay? Of course, issues, escalations, product feature requests. You want a product to do a thing that it's not currently doing. You have a great use case. We build it up. We work with the service team. We get it on our feature request a roadmap. Sometimes we may have other customers who want it to do the same thing. Again, we add you. It adds a little bit more weight. Sometimes gets done a little bit faster. Strategic business reviews. This is one of the coolest tools in all of AWS Batman belt. We get to work with your executive team to make sure, are we doing the right things? What have we done for you in the past? What are we currently doing for you now? What we're going to do for you in the future? And are we mapping our activities back to those biggest things to help make sure you're successful? This is important. I have seen customers come through. They do this once. They're like, okay, this is great. They only have this loop back mechanism once. I've seen TAMs do this 4 times in 1 year. One of the most successful TAMs did it every other 6 months. So it's like every other quarter. But the business is what drives this, not the TAM, not enterprise support. Business says, hey, we have ever evolving, changing environment. So we want to make sure you're evolving with us. Please stay in sync. This is great because that's the time when the TAM's working with the operational staff to relay what they're doing, but also looping back with the executive staff to see exactly what the partnership's doing for them. Okay, and of course, evolve. Support planning. Are we always doing the right thing? Are we being proactive? Are we educating your team? Are we identifying those dark spots? Right? And of course, reviews, roadmaps, technological change and direction.
I'll do this one. So we love our flywheels here at Amazon. You know, anybody who's been here before, Matt. It's really important for us to iterate on this over and over because what you're doing today and what you're doing over the next 6 months could be completely different from what you're doing beyond that, or even mid-cycle, things may change your plans. I had a customer that was doing a major migration. We were focused on a very specific set of engagements to help them achieve that and shut down their external data centers. But following that, we're looking at application modernization, totally different skill sets, totally different engagements that we're doing with them to help them achieve those goals. So understanding your goals, planning appropriately, monitoring the activities, doing business reviews to show you that we are focused on those things and are we in the right area, and then iterating on that over and over.
All right. And our work should always evolve with you. Tactical work, analytic work, strategic work, what makes you successful this month, this quarter, this year is not what's going to make you successful the next year's quarter, the next year's roadmap, the next year's set of goals. This is really important because as our work evolves, you will need us for tactical. You will need us for analytic. You will need us for strategic. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that this work evolves over time. Okay, what does all this mean? TAMs need to know how to assess customers' cloud adoption path. This is huge. I hate reading from slide decks, but that is a big one for me. Okay, we need to consistently show value by mapping our activities back to the biggest projects. It's not just about break fix. Because if we place ourselves at the lowest common denominator, that's where the value is going to be. TAMs and customers always start to elevate their TAM when they understand what enterprise support can do for them. Of course, we have to be strategic. But it also falls in line with the cloud adoption path. You've heard me talk about this before. Beginner cloud, intermediate, and advanced. And the type of work we provide them, tactical, analytic, and strategic, and how it evolves. So it only gives you 9 variables. Customer can also have different divisions at different phases. So what made this one division successful, this division might not even be there yet. So they can take lessons learned, or vice versa. Maybe they're 2 iterations ahead of this one, and now all of a sudden they're creating standards. One of the previous customers in here, you said you were creating standards for your teams, right? To how to use some of that architecture, which was a great example. Okay, are there any blockers? Blockers meaning maybe legacy architecture, that's a big one. Blockers, my downstream customers are so dependent on a thing that we do, but it just hasn't evolved because it's no longer supported, and now we have to support this thing that is old and archaic. Okay, what are the main concerns? Cost, value, education, architecture, moving forward. There's tons. This could go on for days, depending on the environment, depending on the industry. Okay? But we have to understand the cycle, because if we don't understand the cycle, how are we supposed to get you from point A to point B?
And depending on where the customer is in this journey, we have different activities that we would focus on. So I jump into them, but we have them on a slide.
Yes, the conversations, artifacts, and activities. This is a big deal because the cloud maturity model, we have to sit down with the business. Where are you at? Where do you want to be? Where's the efficiencies? Conversations. Of course, these are just samples, and you could probably put a dozen more in there. But what's your cloud history? What are the people who are your enablers? What's the security aspect? What are the major security concerns? Operational governance. This is a big one. I'm dealing with a couple of customers right now that's more of their business driver right now, because if they can't figure out how to play in that playground, how am I supposed to be successful? Of course, the artifacts. What are the things we're providing you as a customer? Support plan, business reviews, assessments, trust advisory reports, architectural reference models. These are all the artifacts we can work with your team to provide. Activities. What are the activities I'm actually doing? Maybe it's workshops, assessments, the SSP. We keep repeating the strategic support plan because this is a document we align ourselves to. If we're not aligning to your biggest things, there's a miss. So this way we build it into everything that we do. Learning needs assessments, of course. Nick, see, we built this in there for you. Optimizations and architecture, of course. Next one. Okay, understanding your strategy. If you're going right and we're talking about going left, we're not in alignment. We have to understand your history, your mission. We have to understand what your next product launch cycles are so that way we can map our activities correctly. What is your competition? Do you think that this competition is making a new product or work? Like, if we understand that, then we can help your team try to get ahead of some of those problems. They might be architectural speaking or architecture and design. How does your business make money? This is a big one. Because if I don't know how you're successful, how am I supposed to make the right recommendations? Okay, we do talk about OPEX, CAPEX numbers because that falls into, now we're not talking about looking at your business OPEX, CAPEX numbers, we're talking about cloud operational expense. This is important because if we don't understand how you're spending your money and looking at budgets and looking at optimizations, how are we supposed to make the right recommendations? Okay, risks, opportunities, this is very important. Of course, again, defining business goals, what's important to you. If we're not mapping it back to that, then there's a miss. Again, I cannot stress that enough. Of course, our activities. We touch on the workshops. We touch on the co-writing of our support plans. Of course, executive conversations. Enterprise support, you say, hey, you're a TAM, so you should be case jockey. Break fix is always going to happen. It's always going to happen. Executives want to know what they're getting for their enterprise support spend. So the best use of that is making sure we're always having alignment with the execs and with the operational staff. This is very important. Then goes back into stakeholder conversations, it goes back into risk mitigation, it goes back into reference architecture.
And really, it should be the whole account team.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
So, your account manager, your solution architect, your technical account manager, we should all be in sync in helping to drive those initiatives that are important to you.
Right. I'm supposed to be his hype man today. Yeah,
No, I'm doing it. Yeah. Keep going.
All right, technology roadmap. Sometimes, what gets us to that technology roadmap phase or the technology phase that we're in, regardless if it's beginner, intermediate, advanced, lift and shift, breaking into managed services, or even breaking it into microservices, it doesn't really matter which phase you're at, but understanding where you're at is important. Because I can say, yeah, go to microservices. This is going to be great architecture, and I'm waving this flag and I'm marching down this path. You're like, we just did our lift and shift. We still have apps sitting on top of EC2 in an operating system. Stop talking about this. We're right here. So having the right conversations at the right timeline, especially around the technology, that's important. So those conversations that we have, again, alignment, the dependencies, the timelines, the prioritizations. These things will be key in making sure you're successful with enterprise support. Again, artifacts, we go back to the support plans, the business reviews. Of course, making sure your team has the, trust but verify, trust they understand what the service does, but maybe getting a little bit more information around it. Again, communication plan, this is a big one. If all I'm doing is talking to engineers, am I actually asking the right questions with the architect team? Or maybe the director of operations, or maybe their technology roadmap plan. Learning needs assessment. This is a big one. We keep touching on that as well, but again, our activities. This goes back into our enterprise support benefits, especially around the technology roadmap, whiteboarding, countdown, so on and so forth.
Yeah, so learning needs assessment, real quick, if you haven't heard of that, it's a survey basically that we can send out to all of the developers or folks within your organization. And then we aggregate those results to identify areas and opportunities for training. And then we work with our training department to help get your people up to speed, whether that means doing a deep dive, doing a hands-on workshop, or whatever it is. And hopefully it aligns to the initiatives and activities that are important to you at that time. Doesn't make sense to give you training on something 9 months before you need it, because it not only will you forget it, but it'll probably change by then.
Yeah, just in time communication, just in time training, just in time delivery. Of course, we can touch on the optimization evolution. We talk in terms of optimization when it comes to architecture and cost. Cost op on a page, 7 major things that a customer can do to get 95% the way there. Was it all right?
We got them on the next slide.
Yeah, we've got them on the next slide. I can touch on that later. But anyway, it's about making sure you evolve your operations and your architecture and your costs in a way that's manageable, but at the same time, having the team that's been there, that's done that, that's kind of burn the edges of the eyebrows. I have been through some of these crazy ones where we found some savings because it was an architectural problem, or because somebody from the FinOps team didn't understand what an RI actually did. So something is super simple, but something that could also be complex. Right, next one. Optimization path, quick wins.
Yeah, we hear cost optimization a lot. And if your TAM is focused on cost optimization, they're not really helping you with your biggest objectives. It may be a desire to save money, but for what? To help reinvest that into your architectures, to come up with new features and functions. So it's really important to understand what that is. But we have a whole concierge team for enterprise support customers that will focus on generating reports, coming up with areas for you on optimization, and you can work with your TAM on the architectural aspects. So if you're interested in a TAM talking about optimization, we usually just touch on these 7 things that you see up here, RIs and SPs, and making sure you're using instant scheduler to shut off things that aren't being used. But then you start to get into the more difficult things, which are the architecture changes. These are more costly as you're doing it, and you got to prioritize. So maybe you want to expand into Europe instead of, remodernizing your entire application at the time.
So actually, to highlight a couple of key things that he said is if this gets you 95% the way there, this has a cost on just the service usage. But what we don't find people actually taking into account is there might be some knowledge that my team has to get before we can take advantage of that next evolution of maybe a managed service or even breaking things into microservices. Maybe it's downtime. Maybe it's an re-architecture review. There is a variable in there that is not just the cost. And we want to highlight this with our customers so that way we can get ahead of it and it becomes an active discussion instead of something that just we wait until the last minute.
And our last slide.
What now? What do you want from enterprise support? I always love these. This I will read from the slide deck from here. What do you want from enterprise support? What do you want from your TAM? What is strategic support planning? What are the value in there? What's path forward we have for our small to medium business and from some of our greenfield customers? We have another program. Strategic business reviews. What values are you actually getting? And are you actually focusing on the right things?
The first thing I always ask when I sit in an executive meeting with a customer is I ask if they have any expectations. Is there something specific that you think that I should be doing for you? Because if I don't know what they want me to do and I have a totally different opinion, there's no way I'm going to deliver the value that they're looking for. So we need to level set at the beginning. So I feel that's a good starting point.
100%. Okay. So this is where we allow you guys to control the conversation when it comes to what is it that you either find valuable or don't find valuable, or you have questions on, or you're like, it's totally like a random question that we probably aren't prepared for, but we will help you answer it the best way we can. Any questions?
I think one thing customers don't value as much.
Actually, let me bring this over here.
I personally think one thing that customers don't value as much coming from a TAM is that all those engagements are customizable. There's 30 different security tools that I have and in my pocket, and I'm trying to find the right one to fit for you. So I can customize any one of those for any one of our customers as well. So that's kind of an interesting call out.
It's a shameless security plug. But yes, very important.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. So if I'm deploying enterprise support in my organization, how do I know that my TAMs are talking to the right people? Who are those people? How many of them should you be interacting with? What's the right scope and depth and breadth and cadence?
You want to answer this or you want me?
Yeah, for me, it always starts with the business objectives at the highest level. So in the C-suite, what is important? What are you trying to accomplish this year, over the next 6 months, over the next year? From there, we can identify the specific initiatives that you have going on amongst your development teams that are helping drive those business goals. Based on those, the TAM can focus their alignment in those areas, whether it's training your team on understanding how to use new tools and technology and services, or whether it's helping with architecture reviews. Are you going to be efficient and optimized and resilient in what you're developing here? And is it going to meet the specific goals that you have, RPO, RTO, performance, throughput, those types of things? But understanding those and then focusing our efforts to help you align to those initiatives is where I like to start.
I say it's twofold. And actually it actually builds on what Brian was saying, is when I'm doing onboarding with a customer, right up from the get-go, I have 2 meetings. 2. One for the executives, because they need to know what they're getting with their brand new car, if they're just gonna purchase it, right? Then I wanna sit down with the operational staff, because sometimes there's mismatch in alignment, right? They want to go down this path, and this team might not even be prepared or understand what that path even is. So I like to have, when I'm onboarding a brand new customer, I'll have 2. What are the technical challenges that this group is facing? But what is the business related challenges that maybe it's architecture, maybe it's a launch of a new product, maybe it's the lift and shift, so on and so forth. By handling those 2 types of meetings in the very beginning, I set the stage for engagement. So
I guess this conversation will continue here. Both of them are here. I think we're running a little bit short of time, so let's move on.
Okay.
Next presentation.
So we have Nick and Brian that are going to come up and talk about, what is it, security, Nick? Security Improvement Program.
Just a reminder, we have networking here as well. We have the executives, we have the TAMs, and we can keep the discussion going. Let's move to the next one.